Hey guys, Scary Stories here. Tonight we're going to be looking at a few different creepypastas. The first one's really short, and I think I saved the best one for last. So, yeah, I hope you enjoy. This first one was posted back in 2013 by Daydream or Daymares. I did a little bit of peeking around over the weekend on the Creepypasta wiki site, and I actually figured out how to see who originally posted the creepypastas and who edits them. So, I can actually start shouting people out now, which is great. Daymares on his profile says, I write things. I'm currently working on a horror series for publication, so please feel free to leave critiques and comments on my work. I also post my works on Tumblr and DeviantArt under the same name. Man, I haven't heard from DeviantArt in years. Anyways, the first story's called Doppelgangers. What if we're slowly being invaded, but nobody realized it? What if nobody realized it because the invaders were able to devour a person and then take on every aspect of their appearance and the ability to perfectly mimic their personality for other humans? It's starting to sound like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which I haven't seen, so don't spoil it. What if this has been going on for years, and they've been slowly integrating themselves into society, becoming world leaders, the rich, the big names? What if they're taking over the average people too? Your friends, your spouse, your family or neighbors, the waitress who took your order yesterday? What if you're the only human that's left? Bum bum bum. Yeah, looking at the comments, everybody seems to like it. Short but good, short but gold. Quite short, but the last line hits quite hard. We All Die in the End says, that was the subject of a well-known movie called Invasion of the Body Snatchers. See, I knew it sounded familiar. There's also a lot of people saying, reminds me of Leviathans from Supernatural Season 7, which I've also not seen Supernatural, but I thought Leviathans were those sea dragon things, right? I don't know. We're going to move on to the next story, though, and this one's a little bit more disturbing, especially if you have trypophobia. Tryptic phobia? One sec, Google will know. Yeah, trypophobia is an aversion or repulsion to objects like honeycombs and sponges that have repetitive patterns or clusters of small holes. People with trypophobia are disgusted by patterns of holes, but they don't necessarily have a fear of holes. Interesting. Anyways, here's the story. It's called Dots in the Dark. A few years ago, my family moved into a house that didn't meet housing regulations. The electrical box was located right behind a large pillar. Electrical lines were wired like they were done by a monkey on speed, and the rooms were built with no possible connection to the air conditioning, making them hot as hell. However, the strangest thing about it was the room I was put into. It was built somewhere in the middle of the structure, so it wasn't possible to have any windows to the outside. So, when the door closes at any time of the day, the room goes completely dark. After I got all my stuff into my room and started sleeping there, I'd always find small marks on my body in the morning. I went to the doctor the first time it happened, but he didn't have any clue what was happening. Because we didn't have any room in the house for me to sleep in except the garage, and I'd rather drink liquefied rat poison than sleep in that roach-infested hole meant for cars to collect dust in, I had to keep sleeping in that room. The guy doesn't like his garage. These marks were always the same. 2 little rounded dots, about half an inch away from each other. While my family joked around that it was a baby vampire feeding itself with my own blood, the only one who said anything that made any sense was my mom, who thought it might have been a roach that came from somewhere in the house. They constantly sprayed down the room with Raid to keep the roaches away, though it didn't seem to stop the marks from appearing on me. Meanwhile, I wanted to test how far whatever's happening will go to do this to me. I tried wrapping myself in all my clothes, from covering my feet with socks to covering my head with one of my scarves. The next day, I unwrapped myself, only to find another set of marks on the back of my right hand. I borrowed my brother's nightlight when he went over to one of his friends' houses, just to have a little light in the room. The next morning, I find an odd smell, and the nightlight disconnected from the wall socket, with the ball shattered to pieces. So just to recap, because I know I was a little confused at this point, the kid and his family move into a new house, and he gets stuck in the room that's in the middle of the house with no windows. Shortly after, he starts waking up with what looks like vampire bites on him, 2 little red dots. I guess I'm making a little assumption there with the vampire bites, but that's what the family said, so. Anyways, the doctor doesn't know what's going on, so the kid starts trying to figure it out himself. He starts wrapping himself up in blankets and stuff in case it's a bug creeping into his bed, but he still wakes up with the bites. Last night he goes to bed with a nightlight, wakes up and the nightlight's destroyed. Where my confusion came in was I thought it was bites all over his body, but upon second reading, it looks like it's just the 2 dots every night, just in different spots. Okay, anyways, I just wanted to clarify that, because it confused me the first time. Back to the story. I asked my dad to sleep in my room for one night while I slept with my mom. He complied, and he spent the entire night uninterrupted while I ended up with more dots on my chest. I decided to stay up all night during one weekend, just surfing through the net to kill some time. Suddenly, my laptop crashed, and when I went to restart it, I felt it. I could feel the marks being put right on the nape of my neck, and I could see it when I ran into the bathroom to check. Because I often wore long-sleeved clothing, no one ever saw the dots whenever I went to school or anywhere else, unless I explicitly wanted to show them. I told one friend the entire ordeal, and they offered to have me sleep over at their house to test something out. I slept there, and it seemed like the thing that was doing this to me was pissed by this. I say this because the next morning I found 2 dots, bigger than usual, right on my forehead. She gave me a headband to cover it up as I went back home and back to that room. I showed my family what happened, and they finally decided to leave the house and move somewhere else, far away from that room. I decided to sleep in the living room for the next few days while we packed everything up. On the night we rode away from the house, I felt like a great burden was lifted off my chest as I fell asleep during the car ride, resting on my mom's shoulder in the back. Suddenly, a great pain pulsed through my eyeballs, forcing my father to stop the car on the side of the road. When I tried to open my eyes for them to check, I couldn't see anything but pure black. They said to me after they got me to the hospital that it looked like my pupils split, looking like those goddamn dots. I was blinded for trying to leave the house and for trying to leave the room, and my punishment was to forever see the pitch black darkness of that room for the rest of my life. Whoa. The idea of going blind always freaked me out, so I thought that ending was pretty intense. If trypophobia bothers you at all, and you haven't already, you should check out Junji Ito. I always think of his story, The Chill, whenever I see those pictures online that are supposed to trigger your trypophobia if you have it. Those feet with all the little holes in them. It's gross. But yeah, let's move on to the last story. It comes from a site run by somebody who translates creepypastas, 2chan posts, and other true creepy stories from Japan into English. The site itself is called kowabana.net, and I encourage you to go look into it. This weekend that went by, I spent a lot of time looking into different sites that had creepypastas and true crime stories on them, but weren't in English. I found some really good ones, and I even found a creepypasta wiki, but for Brazil. A Brazilian creepypasta wiki. I'm sure a lot of the stories are the same as ours, but I always heard that they got some good ones that we didn't get. Should be interesting to check out. Anyways, this story's called The Truth Behind My Family's Eccentricities. I hope you enjoy. This is a true story that I still can't believe happened to me. When I was still in the 3rd grade of junior high, I lived with my parents and my younger brother. He was still in lower grades of elementary school. We watched Kohaku Udagassen, and then I wondered if I might have a good New Year's dream. I went to bed, and everything was fine. But then I had a bad dream in the middle of the night, and suddenly woke up. I don't remember what the dream was about. My heart was beating so loudly that I could almost hear it, and I was covered head to toe in greasy sweat. It was like somebody poured cold water down my back, and I froze as I bolted upright in my bed. A nightmare to kick off New Year's. Well, this sucks, I thought. I couldn't get back to sleep, and my throat was parched, so I went to the living room where the fridge was, and found my family all sitting in front of the TV still. I didn't see the clock, but I think it was around 2 a.m. The TV was still on, and even though it was late at night, and nothing was supposed to be airing, the news or something was playing. But it was silent. And on top of that, all the windows were open, making the inside just as cold as the outside. Something was clearly wrong. A chill ran down my spine. "What are you doing? Have you gone nuts?" I yelled, half angry, half scared and trembling. "Well, my little brother said, his voice too quiet to hear. Then he burst into tears. My parents watched the whole thing silently, no expression on their faces, and then they got up and closed all the windows, turned off the TV, and said to my crying brother, "It's time for bed now," and took him off to bed. The new year started off on the worst, creepiest foot it could, and I didn't feel like sleeping any further. I just sat in my room and read comics until the sun rose. When I got up, I asked my parents what they were doing last night, but they just looked at me like, "Huh?" Their dubious faces looked nothing like the expressionless ones I'd seen the night before, and their suspicious looks at me made me panic. I have no idea what was going on. Did I see a ghost or something last night? Well, my friends wouldn't believe me even if I told them, and my girlfriend broke up with me in December, so I was probably just mentally exhausted and seeing things, I decided. A short while after that, I had another nightmare that woke me up in the middle of the night. This time, I vaguely remember what happened. A stranger had hit me in the back of the head. For some reason, the back of my head continued to hurt even after I woke up. Which, I feel like that's a thing. Getting hurt in your dream and waking up and still feeling the pain. One sec. Get hurt in your dreams and wake up with the pain. Pain in dreams. The results indicate that although pain in dreams is rare, it is nevertheless compatible with the representational codes of dreaming. It's codes in dreaming? Further, the association of pain with dream content may implicate brainstem and limbic centers in the regulation of painful stimuli during REM sleep. What does that mean? No, okay, here you go. Quora. What does it mean if you get hurt in your dream and wake up with the same pain? Related questions. Answer. It almost always means that you are already experiencing the pain while you were asleep. The pain actually caused the dream. The dream didn't cause the pain. Okay. Regrettably, now that I'm getting along in years and having normal aches and pains associated with aging, dreams like this aren't uncommon for me. I'm not always injured in the dream, but I often do dream about the pain itself, and it's still there when I wake up. And then we got another one, a more in-depth answer. When we sleep, our souls automatically leave our body and travel to astral dimensions of our consciousness. When we sleep, the subconscious mind is the one working or doing the thinking process. When we're awake, our conscious mind is working for us. Maybe they mean conscious. So it would be easy to think that you're not the only one in this physical body. We have other bodies unseen and not understood by majority of humans. Why? Because humans are focused so much on the material aspect of their existence, bringing him to believe that this is the real world. So when you sleep, and you remember what happened during your soul's travel, which was that of you being hurt, you will naturally feel the pain in your physical body because the astral world is merely one of your bodies after the physical body going upward. I don't know what that means. There are actually 7 bodies that humans possess, beginning from the source or the unknown. The physical body is the last and grossest body reached during the downward movement in creation, starting from the so-called source, which is the spirit world where everything begins as a spirit, the unknown state or stage in creation. This is like the aggregation of movement until the human spirit reached the gross material form which is the physical body. Here, we exist and communicate through the use of 5 senses. In the long run, humans believe that this material world is the real life. Bro, if she thinks the body's so gross, she could probably shower. Right? No, I'm just kidding. I don't mean to be mean. Okay, well, I thought there'd be a better answer to that, because I feel like when you do dream and get hurt in your dreams, sometimes you can wake up with that pain. I mean, the first answer there makes sense, but I feel like you can also dream the pain and cause your body to hurt itself. Maybe your brain thinks the dream's so real that it sends all those pain receptors down to your stubbed toe, even though you didn't stub your toe, and then you wake up and all those pain receptors are still there. So you feel it when you wake up. Does that not make sense? I don't know. Whatever. Back to the story. The guy had a dream about his family being really weird, and then shortly after that he had a dream about getting hit in the back of the head. When he woke up from that dream, he still had the pain in the back of his head. Yeah. So he goes on to say, I couldn't stop thinking about the ghost that had attacked me. When did we decide this was a ghost? Okay. I couldn't stop thinking about the ghost that had attacked me, and in a panic, I ran into the living room. Nobody was there, and a smoky smell lingered in the air, perhaps from the meat we had for dinner. I remembered the creepy events that happened in the living room on New Year's Eve, and once again I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. Around the start of February, my body began to strangely itch. At first I thought my skin was just dry, but my back and my head especially started to feel like they'd been burnt, and I couldn't stop scratching them. The itching showed no sign of stopping or getting any better, so I went to the doctor to get some cream for it. I was putting some on after I got out of the bath, and my younger brother came over and said, "Let me do it." So I turned my back to him, and the next thing I knew, he slapped me full force. What a shit. It hurt so much that I screamed, "What the hell are you doing?" He always cried whenever I was angry with him, so his eyes soon filled with tears. Here he goes, I thought, and tears silently rolled down his cheeks. Strangely, his face got paler and paler, and then finally it was like he was crying emotionlessly. Creeped out, I turned to look at my parents, and they were also crying, their faces emotionless. It was like they weren't there at all. Looking closer, their mouths were slightly twitching, but I couldn't work out what they were saying. All I could hear was something that sounds like hot. At that very moment, everything around me started to turn red, and then gradually faded to sepia. I'm losing consciousness, I thought, and then the scenery suddenly changed around me. It looked somewhat familiar. It was my cousin's house. My uncle stared at me with a serious look on his face. Why am I here? I couldn't even grasp the situation I was in. Before long, everyone crowded around me. At first, I thought I was dreaming again, but I was really at my uncle's house. I had no idea what was going on, but for some reason my grandparents were there too, and I was covered in bandages, so I panicked. Wouldn't it be better if he doesn't remember? I heard my grandfather say. We have to tell him what happened, my uncle said. They still haven't caught the guy who did it, and the police will no doubt be back soon. My uncle told me everything. Apparently somebody set fire to our house and my entire family on New Year's Day. I happened to be at the convenience store at the time, so I'd been saved. But because I'd apparently seen the person who did it on my way back, they hit me in the back of the head and then took a bat to my entire body, beating the living daylights out of me until I passed out. Apparently I'd been stuck in a state between life and death at the hospital, but once I recovered, they sent me to stay at my uncle's place. It was March, meaning I'd lost 2 months' worth of memories, and after 2 months of rehab, my memories were only coming back now. I bawled my eyes out. I lost everything important to me in an instant, and learning that it had all happened 2 months earlier, I couldn't keep it in any longer. My grandparents and uncle watched over me as I cried. My uncle quietly looked away, and then my grandparents cried with me as I bawled. My body was covered in bruises, and I had so many bandages on that I looked like a mummy. A sharp pain ran throughout my joints when they bent. Why all the windows were open in the middle of the winter, why my family was emotionless like that, why I had the dream of the stranger hitting me and then everything turning red. It was like a jigsaw puzzle suddenly coming together. In the end, they never caught the guy who did it. When they took the bandages off my bruised back, they found a clear handprint the same size as my brother's there. 5 years had passed since the incident, and the bruises faded, and so did his handprint. I'm sorry this was so long and not written very well. For me, it was an unforgettable incident. The story may not have been scary, but when I think about how the criminal hasn't been caught yet, I find that the most terrifying thing of all. Thank you for reading. Well, what did you think of those? Like I said, that was kowabana.net. However you pronounce it, it'll be on the screen now. Like I said before, I don't link to things outside of YouTube because they're extremely sensitive with what you link, so I've already been warned for linking to a Reddit account, and I appealed it like over a year ago, and they still haven't gotten back to me, even though it says they'll get back to you within a month or two to say if it got appealed or not, so yeah. But very cool website, very cool. I'm fascinated by the idea of reading creepypastas and scary true stories from other cultures that, we don't have access to as an English speaker, so somebody translating them and just being able to use Google Translate on other sites that I find is really neat. Hopefully you think that stuff's cool too, and we'll explore some of that together coming up. But yeah, that's the end of the video. If you could do me a favor, give it a like if you liked it, give it a dislike if you disliked it. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're trying to get to 1,000, and we're kind of getting there. We're almost there, so. And yeah, I have tons of other videos if you want to listen to some other stories. But if not, then I hope you have a good night. Take care of yourself. I know you deserve it. And I'll see you in the next one. Have a good night. Bye for now.